Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us here in Renton for NewSpace 2018. My name is Neil McHenry. I'm the volunteer MC here today for the Space Frontier Foundation. And I'd like to go ahead and introduce Jeff Feige. He's the chair of the board of the Space Frontier Foundation, and he's going to be giving some opening remarks.
Thanks a bunch, Neil. Well, hey, it's good to see you guys. A lot of familiar faces in the crowd. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar, but this year, 2018, marks the 30th year of the Space Frontier Foundation existing. This is our 30th birthday. And what I wanted to do as I kind of got this conference started, sort of kick things off today, is I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background and history about who the Space Frontier Foundation is, what we do, sort of how all these things impact what we're trying to do as an organization, and basically tell that story for you. So very quickly, the Space Frontier Foundation was founded in 1988, and the purpose of the organization was to figure out how to get humanity into space permanently. And by permanently, I don't just mean, a few astronauts in space permanently, but I mean create an opportunity for all of us to live and work in space as we wanted to. And so when you look at the early history of the organization, the first 15 years or so, all of that history is wrapped up in mostly public policy stuff, pushing on the government to do this or the government to do that. But over time, we had this realization that the government is an actor and they have a role to play. But if you really want the vision of the future that we're all describing, then you don't get there by just having the government do more or less or focus on this program or that program. You do it by having a large private commercial space industry. And what's exciting is that now we're getting to the point where that actually has happened. And part of the way that this organization has contributed its efforts to that end was that we began organizing events like this. And for those of you who don't know, we're now doing events like this all over the world. I've been, from my perspective, sort of at the top level of the organization, we're actually almost at the point where we're struggling from team stretch now. We're doing not only this event, but we're doing NewSpace Europe, which this next year is going to be in Luxembourg, November 27th and 28th. Last month, we did an event in Portugal. We're being solicited to do events in the Middle East and Asia. And for a group that started as, even to this day, we have a handful of paid people, and the majority of our staff, everybody you see running around everything from registration to everything else, is a volunteer-based organization where you have a few people who are in leadership roles and then a whole lot of people who are dedicating their time and energy because they're passionate and they believe in this stuff. And all of those people now we're not just doing US events, we're scattered all over the world promoting this vision of a private commercial space industry that can enable all of us to be doing and acting more in space. And I think the sort of final thought about where does this organization go in the future, what will events like this look like in the future, where does all of this end, is we will likely be expanding activities even beyond this into things other than just conferences and events. Those of you who've kind of been in the industry for a while often think of us as sort of we're a group that runs events, and I think the answer is that it's going to get even bigger than that. We'll likely be doing other things. We've looked at hardware projects. We've looked at policy projects. We've looked at partnerships with companies. We've looked at major market studies, such as the one that we're doing with our new partners, Deloitte, looking at the scale and size of how big the commercial space market could evolve into being. And I hope some of the discussions that we'll have at this conference can tell you a little bit about that. So there's 30 seconds on the Space Frontier Foundation. That's sort of who we are. The one other thing I always like to do at these events, at NewSpace, at our ones all around the world, is I like to open these events by giving everyone permission. And what do I mean by that? If all you wanted to do in your life was make a lot of money and then do whatever you were doing in your personal life, you'd be doing something else. We all know it. It's okay. And I'm giving you permission to look at the person next to you, to sit in this room and have the openness and realization to say, I know why we're here. It's because we believe in a future, and we may have little nuanced differences about where we see it going, but we understand where this has the potential to go. We understand what it could mean, and we're putting our lives and our energy into that. Whether you're running a company, whether you're just an employee at a project, whether you're here from a nonprofit, whether you're here from government, if all you wanted to do was just have a job, you'd be doing something else. So I want to give everybody permission to acknowledge that. Acknowledge it to your neighbors, acknowledge it to your partners, turn to the guy next to you and say, all right, so since we both know why we're here, what part are you doing to fit into this big thing? So that's how I always like to open these events, give people a little bit of a picture of who we are as an organization and, let's be honest with each other. The rest of the program, as you kind of work through the day, there are a few other things that I wanted to draw attention to. Historically, the Space Frontier Foundation has focused almost exclusively on commercial activities. And every now and then we'll bring one or two government partners up to tell about a specific program or project or what have you. But this year we've gone a little bit farther than that, and I want to talk about why we have. This is the first year that we have a military space panel at NewSpace. This is a year where we brought in folks from the NASA Commercial Crew Program to talk about some of those things. And I want to talk for a moment about why we made those decisions. So the reasoning for that is that as the scale and size of the private commercial space market has increased, we're now beginning to see government and government programs and projects begin to say to themselves, well, how do we take advantage of this? How do we leverage this? How do we start to understand? Because it used to be that the industry had, just a handful of people and a handful of companies. And frankly, I feel like I used to know them all. And now there are hundreds of companies in this business that I don't know. And I know our government operators are seeing the same situation. And so we wanted to create an opportunity to do that. So that's just an opportunity for everybody to talk to each other and to learn from each other. So that's a little bit of our thinking for the conference in general. One last note that I wanted to make, we do try to provide strong content at these events. We do try to have a cool venue, and I got to tell you, I'm in love with this one. So this is a pretty cool spot. But we see the purpose of this conference as a networking and deal flow conference. So here at the hotel, we have a number of private reserved rooms for meetings. So if there's a private discussion that you need to have with anybody, whether it's a customer or an investor or a partner or whatever have you, you can talk to some of our staff and we can arrange you private meeting space at any time at the event. And that's actually one of our sort of key principles. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that, give you a little bit of a picture of where things are going. And then I think I'll step right off stage and let them introduce the next speaker. But it's great to have you here. Welcome to NewSpace 2018.